What are we supposed to be talking about anyway?
Life, death.
I hate that. Death.
Damian, when did you first start to think about painting cherry blossoms?
I think a couple of things happened. The first thing was that I was doing the veil paintings, and they kind of looked a little bit like trees or something. I was in the veil paintings. I was trying to get like a depth of about 6 inches where you looked at them but through them, so they were kind of this sort of like there was something in your way to try and see something beyond or something like that. I didn't know what I was doing, but they were like abstract paintings with only about a foot of depth or something like that. And then through doing that, I kind of realised they looked like gardens or trees. So that was the first thing, was that. I thought, oh, I wonder if I could do trees. And then I thought, nah, it's too stupid. And then, but then when I was younger, my mum did a cherry blossom painting. I remember when I was like 4 or 5, seeing it in the house with oil paints. And she wouldn't let me ever use oil paints because you can't clean them, they're too messy. And so I was always fascinated, wanting to go play with them. And then I just started thinking about abstraction and figuration. And then thinking, well, maybe if I could do it, because I thought if you do paintings of trees, they look crap. But if they manage to remain abstract but look figurative, then maybe they could bridge those two worlds. So I just thought I'd try that. And then I remembered my mum's cherry blossoms. I thought I should just do cherry blossoms.
I love the fact that there's a personal aspect to that, because of course, this is catnip to art historians, which I want to talk to you about in a minute, but everyone starts saying, you know, Van Gogh, Bonnard, the whole history of Western art you can distill into tree paintings if you're so inclined. What about the spots, your own spot paintings, and then things like visual candy? Did they consciously here, or do you suddenly find that as you proceed with a new series, oh yeah, it relates to that, everything seems like a distillation of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think they are here. I mean, I think one thing that's really important is that the painting is sort of a lot more acceptable now than it was when I first got into art. It's like we sort of looked down on painters, really, when, you know, at Goldsmiths.
You did?
Yeah, it was all conceptual art. I mean, you know, not painters from history, but painters in the present. The idea, I mean, you know, I was at Goldsmiths, we were all going to B&Q to buy our materials. We'd never find us in Windsor and Newton. We wouldn't buy art, you know, using oil paint was like ridiculous. It's like, so we wanted to sort of change that. And we just thought it was old-fashioned or it was no good. I mean, of course, you know, it inspires you, but you just think, you know, people say, what kind of paints do you use? I was like, house paints. I remember once going into America and they said to me, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm an artist. And they said, oh, what kind of art do you make? And I went, oh, you know, I do kind of animals in formaldehyde. And they said, you do paintings? And I went, yeah. And they went, what kind of paint do you use? And I went, house paints. And they went, okay, come in the back, we'll search you. Because it was just such a stupid story, you know, it just didn't make any sense.
But I always thought you romanticised painting. You know, the way you talk about it, you were always blown away by seeing painters.
Yeah, I think in the early 90s, though, I was trying to deny that. It's like I kind of came around to accept that later on, but it's like, you know, I mean, I was like, I wanted art that was now, in your face. I was more influenced by Saatchi and Saatchi adverts than anything else. And it's like the idea of putting a painting next to a Saatchi advert, it just couldn't work, you know, for me. And I was just like, I wanted people to, you know, I wanted to get hold of people. You know, the medicine cabinet was something found in the real world, put into a gallery, put in your face to confuse you and, you know, fox you. There was a visual language that I was trying to communicate with people, but painting didn't do it for me, because it's like with the painting, you have to kind of accept it before you enter it or something. I think today it works again now. It's like, but then it just didn't. It's like I couldn't sort of bear the illusion of a painting when the real world was so full and vibrant and there's so much going on. And in a painting, I just thought it's like a fake window. And I just couldn't do it. I suppose that was it as well. In the 50s abstract stuff, you know, 50s, 60s abstract painting, that was what I was into. I was into the Rothko, I was into the New York School, you know, painters like that. There was a painter in Leeds called Patrick Oliver, who was a bit of a Peter Lanyon type painter, and I loved his paintings and he taught me. And when I got to Goldsmiths, I thought all conceptual art was shit and I was going to change the world back to how it should be, to this, you know, great way of painting, paint how you feel type of art, you know. And then I realised at Goldsmiths that I was wrong, and so I had to switch. But it's like, both couldn't exist together, really. And then when I realised that Sol LeWitt and Dan Flavin and Judd were kind of emotional, I realised there's emotion, you can get emotional, you can have emotional reactions to it. It kind of blew my mind and I got totally into that, and that's what the spot paintings came out of. And it was when I did the catalogue raisonné of all my paintings, there were 2 early spots where it was dribbly and messy, and I thought, fuck, they look good, but I hated them when I made them. That was the end of that abstraction at Goldsmiths, was the dribbly spots. And then I went, no, can't do this, totally into minimalism and emotion. So the emotions were hidden in the spot paintings, and then I just, you know, did that for 25 years of spots, perfect painted spots. And then at the end of that, I did the colour space paintings where I went back and I made a whole series about the dribbly spots. And after that, that was when I got into the cherry blossoms. But also the visual candy, when I look back to it now, I did the visual candy at the same time as I was doing spot paintings, but the spot paintings were this big at that time and the visual candy were this big. So I obviously didn't have the confidence. So I did it because I thought, fuck you all, I'm not going to let go of this kind of painting. But I actually reduced it to a small scale because I was like, obviously not behind it, I didn't feel it. So since then, these are the first time I've sort of gotten to the right kind of scale where that kind of painting needs to be, you know. I mean, I love Bonnard as well. At the time, I was, you know, interrailing and going and looking at loads of Bonnards. There was a Bonnard show in Paris I went to see when I was at, you know, Leeds Art School in the, like, you know, late 80s, mid 80s.
It's interesting that you talk about, we've talked about scale, visual candy and spots and so on, because these seem to have a very logical scale, but when I think about it, why have you chosen this format? Why not do them like this, or why not do them 4 times larger?
I wanted them to be big to kind of, so you can fall into them. And I also, you know, I'm aware that they've got to compete with trees. Also, it's like your field of vision, you know, it's like when you look at a tree, you sort of, you know, if you're up close, you sort of see about that much of it. So I just wanted them that big. Because they started off with the cherry blossoms where I wanted them to be like looking up into a tree, so there's no gravity, it's just the canopy. But then slowly by painting them upright, I kind of started adding trunks. So the early ones have got no trunks, and then the later ones have got, well, they're more abstract as well.
But these are life-size. That's the answer, isn't it? The trunks themselves, the range of different trunks and branches are life-size.
Yeah, that's what they become, I think, at the end of the day, yeah.
And cropping, which obviously goes back in, you know, the history of Western art, that impressionist, post-impressionist moment, Japanese art, the invention of photography. So we know the history of cropping, but what prompts your particular cropping or framing? Is it the immersive aspect you're looking at?
Yeah, I just want it to be in your face. I want you to feel like you're too close to it. You know, I mean, all the kind of work I've made, you know, the sharks, everything, all that sort of stuff, I want it to be aggressive and in your face. I want you to have a sort of physical reaction to it. I mean, ever since when I went to the Saatchi Gallery and walked through a Richard Serra and thought, fucking hell, it could fall on me and kill me, and run out the other side and then, you know, sort of have an actual physical panic, really, from it. You know, just a small one, just like thinking, shit, is that safe? You know, it's like, I kind of want to try and create that, and I do that in a lot with scale, and you can even do that in a painting.
There's no focal point, it's all over.
Yeah, so I've sort of tried to get that from the spot paintings that I understand from the spot paintings into the cherry blossoms. I mean, it's so mental doing nature as well, because nature's like, I mean, we're human beings, but as human beings, our brains don't think in terms of nature. It's like you think in terms of patterns. So it's like, you know, I mean, I couldn't use assistants. Like assistants will go, you go put some blue on there. They put blue sort of equidistant all apart all over it, and nature doesn't do that. Every rule it creates, it fucks up. So I'm constantly, when I'm painting, is creating a rule and breaking it, creating a rule and breaking it, creating a, you know, it's like, you know, so when I've had assistants, in the very early beginning before lockdown, I had a couple of people helping me, and I was going, you know, kind of do red dots, but, you know, don't do red dots. And the rules I was trying to create, I was going, you have to sort of mimic nature, and, you know, nature would never do 6 together, but yeah, so do 6 together. Because it would actually. So do 6 together, but don't do 6 together here and 6 together there. Oh no, yeah, you can. And it's like, but it's really hard to sort of find out what it is.
I mean, nature's the most consistent thing. It's the rhythms that determine our life, but the detailing of nature is always unexpected. You can't predict exactly what the blossoms will look like.
Yeah, well, there are no rules. I mean, there are masses of rules, but they're all broken. And to sort of see that sort of that simplicity with that, you know, complexity out of simplicity. But as a human being, I mean, the first thing I did as well with them when I painted them was I only used pink and white, which were the colours I could see in cherry blossoms. So it's got like 4 pinks, 1 white, I tried a different white.
Not mixed. These aren't mixed paints. These are pre-bought paints.
No, I mix them all up. So I'm mixing up pinks that I like and looking at photographs and mixing the colours from the photographs. I go, that's a great picture of cherry blossoms. I'll mix these colours, and they were just dead. And then I realised that I was walking around the street, and I looked at other trees, green trees with leaves on, and I remember looking at a tree and I went, fuck. And I saw like a flash of red and blue. And then I realised the trees are like, you know, because light's got all those colours in it, and the leaves are reflective, and there's that. You always see on a tiny, small level flashes of different colours
Sura.
in the whole thing. Yeah, exactly. The Plantalist, yeah, and Bonnard. And you realise that that's all in there. And it's like, it's not only can you put it in there, if you don't put it in there, your eye don't recognise it as blossoms. So then I started adding reds and yellows and oranges and colours that weren't there. And then the whole thing sort of came to life from that.
It's clear just from that conversation, but just looking at them, these aren't mimetic, you're not trying to copy nature. I think I heard you say before that you're part of nature. Pollock said famously, didn't he, I am nature, and everyone misinterpreted it, said it was arrogant. But what he meant was he was part of that world, he was part of the natural forces.
Yeah, I love that, yeah.
Yeah, Pollock, of course, worked famously on the floor. I'm pretty sure you've worked vertically. I mean, was that a conscious decision, or just an obvious thing to do with things stacked on the wall? You could work serially this way better, or
even if you work on the floor, you've got to see them on the wall. It's like, I mean, the gravity of it's different. I mean, trees grow against gravity anyway, so it's quite nice to have that tension. But I'd looked at Bacon, a lot of Bacon paintings. I mean, I love Bacon, but when I was younger, I'd sort of tried to make Bacon paintings. The way I'd made them, with the splats and the drips, was I'd kind of like, you lay them on the floor and then you go splat with some quite loose paint, and then you leave it to dry and you lift it up and look at it. And that was how I thought Bacon did it. But then after looking at Bacon paintings, owning Bacon paintings and looking at them in real life and more closely, you realise he's got really thick paint and he just throws a huge chunk at it and it just sticks. And then you go, fuck yes, that's what he's done. It's like he never lays them down. They're always upright, but they just look like they're laid down. And then I found you can control that kind of splats better. So I guess I did a kind of Jackson Pollock thing with Bacon's technique, because he'd only do 2 or 3. Yeah, so upright and splats. But I think that, also that kind of energy in the paint is life as well. And it's that, with Bacon, it's the energy of the throw is contained within the paint. And it's a throw, it's not like a pour. When I discovered Pollock, to me it was sort of the end of abstract expressionism. Because you're painting how you feel, and then suddenly, with the moment that the brush is not touching the canvas, it's like all hell breaks loose. The world's over. It's like the end of painting, the end of everything. To me, I've just thought, what can you do then? You can't do anything.
But even though Pollock's paint's fading and cracking, I still find them incredibly fresh, because it's the frozen gesture, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
it's the energy in the paint.
And I suppose there'll be an element of that here in decades to come. But also cherry blossoms per se, we know they're going to fade, but they're this amazing moment of life, isn't it? I mean, it's the hint of summer to come.
Yeah, I mean, it's stupid as well, isn't it?
But we also know that, within 4 days, they all drop off. So it's this sort of accelerated inevitability of death, one of your main subjects.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are like all that, I don't know. I mean, it's weird because it was from my mum's paintings when I was younger, so it's quite difficult to know. I mean, somebody came into the studio, looked at him and said to me, "Are you in love?" And I was like, I hope they're a little bit more fucking aggressive than that. But yeah, I am in love, so maybe it's that too.
Do you ever tire of the possibilities of art? I mean, it's an odd question to ask an artist, and your default position would always be no. But as people get older, some people do get more jaded, they are more questioning, they are more critical, they get more world weary. I don't see a world weariness here, but you may be hiding something.
No, not at all. I mean, lockdown was really good for me, just because I managed to keep painting. I'd had 2 or 3 people in my studio, and I really thought I was on my own. And then when they went, it was a totally different thing when it was just me on my own. I remember when I was younger, all my sort of forays into painting, I was like, I really wanted to be a painter, but I didn't know what to paint. And I was also terrified at the infinite possibilities of painting. So that made it even harder not knowing what to paint. So then, like with spin paintings and spot paintings, that was a sort of way to sort of create a way to paint, hiding from painting as well. So there were sort of like sculptures of paintings, I always thought, and I would think about the edge of the canvas as much about the surface. So they were more of an object. I love the object of a painting, and I wanted to create some of those. And then I thought, yeah, I'm a painter. I create objects of paintings, but I wasn't actually painting. And then I did those blue paintings where I kind of like was very sort of retro and Bacon-esque, and I kind of got into that dark place and had a few friends die, and I got into a really dark room with no light, and I started painting these really black paintings. And then I thought, this isn't painting either. I kind of tricked myself really that you need to be fucking depressed to paint or something like that old Van Gogh thing, which I don't like. And then through that, I kind of came out painting these paintings. I was getting lost in painting and wanting viewers to get lost in my paintings. And so and also this size makes them, there's a lot of physical work to do, so that physical work kind of makes you get lost as well. Makes them convincing as well. They're the kind of paintings I always wanted to paint when I was younger, but never had the guts to do. or something like that. So I think in lockdown, to be in that situation, I was really lucky to sort of have that going on as lockdown hit.
Not the guts because what, they might be seen as too decorative, too sentimental?
I think it's the illusion of painting. I mean, there's two things that really interest me in this type of painting, and it's like the way that we look and see, and it's the glimpse, because I never see you, I see a bit of your face, a bit of your leg, a bit of your, and I see, it's like cubism, but I kind of build a picture in my mind. I very rarely look directly into your eyes. I look like your nose, or I look at your face, I look around, and all those bits make you up. And it's like, to make a painting, you have to be a collection of glimpses. So it's like, I started, when I did the 2 weeks one summer painting that I did at White Cube which were cherry blossoms as well. That was just about painting cherry blossoms, but very more Bacon-esque. I added colour to the kind of blue paintings that I was doing just in the cherry blossoms, the only blue bit. But I'd kind of roughly paint a jug, and then I'd really detailed paint something else, and then do a cherry blossom. And it was that rough and detail. It tricks the eye that there's a glimpse. So that glimpsing thing, it's, like you look at hyper-real painting. I do the fact paintings, and it's like every detail's treated in the same way, with the same amount of detail, and you look at it, and like Freud does, and they're not convincing. And you think, why are Bacon's amazing? And it's because he's got this glimpse thing going on, where you feel like you've sort of glimpsed someone you know, rather than go, this is a portrait of the Queen, or this is a portrait of my friend, and it's like, it's perfect, and you can see all the detail. Wherever you look, the painting gives you all the information for every area you look at. Bacon doesn't. He only gives you little bits of info, which is what a glimpse is like when you see someone in a crowd that you know. So that, and then the other thing I was going to say, is the illusion of risk.
The illusion of risk?
The illusion of risk, because for painters it's not risk, but for people looking at the paintings it is risk. But it's like I've taken the risks by doing it to know how to create the illusion of risk rather than real risk. So it's like it looks like at any moment you could fuck up the painting, but you can't. And that's like, Houdini really, isn't it? Like with that kind of, it's not really going to die, even though it did die. It's the illusion of risk.
But there's also the anxiety of influence that people see as risky. And I love that phrase of yours, the glimpse, actually, because I think that's how history often is in art. Particularly, I see it in your work, that so many different people have commented on these. Art historians have written about it, and they see it understandably through the frame of that which they're interested in. So if you're a Bonnard scholar, you see it in terms of Bonnard. If you're a Leonardo scholar, you see it in terms of Leonardo. But there are glimpses and references, because you know about art history and you spend your life looking at other people's art, historical art, as well as looking at your own. And that's how it works, isn't it? That's how history often permeates. But I just wonder for you, because you mentioned Bacon, and there were times when you were seen by many as explicitly working through Bacon. Is that still the way you would see it? He's one of those artists that you have to get through, for you personally, in order to get here, or is that too reductive?
Yeah, I think so. You have to confront things you can't avoid, and it's like, I understand a lot more about Bacon than I did. It's funny that we've talked today about abstract painters in New York School and Bacon, because it's like you see that in Bacon now. I can see it now, that he used to slag them all off. He'd say Rothko's a twat, didn't like his work, didn't like the way, and he was totally uninfluenced by it. But you look now and he's totally influenced by them all. He throws the paint because Pollock's doing it. But also Titian and Rubens were very influential for the New York School. They were very influential for Bacon, but he saw a different lineage, didn't he? But they've actually both worked through the same project. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it was Ruskin, wasn't it, who said art goes back like to the unbroken line to the cavemen. That kind of view of the history of art. I've always thought that it's like that you go, well, I'm adding to this history of art, in the same way that, you just got to do it, you just add your new thing now and then you become part of the line. I've always seen it like that. It's not, whereas Bacon was definitely sort of saying, I'm not connected to anyone really, apart from people in the past, but not anything current. And even the past, I guess, he was only connected to a select few. So it's like the greats or something like that. But I suppose originality comes into it, doesn't it? At Goldsmiths, it was when I realised you don't need to be original. And it's like, that was the most freeing thing, really. It was like, not only do you not need to be, it's impossible to be. And you can't make a comment about the multifaceted world we live in without, and be original, because it's just not possible, because everything's from everywhere all the time. It's an assault on the senses, so you have to recreate that.
Or there is a diminishing possibility of originality that's more in the detail than it is in the overall conception. Because I was thinking about Van Gogh, and I know in some ways Van Gogh is misunderstood and there's a cliched aspect to him, but in February 1888 he goes down to Arles, and the first thing he sees are the almond blossoms, and he paints that. He paints those amazing paintings. and there's obviously a reverberation through history here. And everything that most people know about Van Gogh is painted after those almond blossom paintings to his death 2 years later. 300 paintings or whatever of that period. And you think, those paintings, how amazing. They begin something. They're full of energy, they're full of life, they're full of possibility. And they're also at the beginning of the inevitable, as it looks now with retrospect and hindsight, trajectory down to his death. And so I find those paintings incredibly charged as a consequence of the knowledge that I have. Now, I'm not going to project onto you and say, these are the beginning of the end, but they seem to be the beginning of the next phase. Is that right? Because we've talked about these as the culmination of different series, but I wonder, where do these take you?
I mean, I think it is that. I think it's the beginning and the end, I would say. It's like, because that's the illusion of risk, is that, it looks like you're balancing. I mean, life's like that, you're balancing, but you could fall. And it's like, that's the whole feeling.
Let's talk about Paris, because you showed in the early 90s a gallery there, Manuel Pereton, but you've never had a museum show in France, solo presentation. Paris is so charged art historically, even though it's disappearing in a sense, that heroic period. How is the idea of showing these in Paris? Does it have particular resonance for you, or is it just another venue?
No, it's amazing, it's great, it's so perfect. I mean, Paris is brilliant. It's like, they've got the Orangerie with the Monets. I mean, also, I said earlier, I went to Paris to see Bonnard, before I was at Leeds Art School, and it's like, that was, interrailing, and we travelled all over Europe. Paris was unbelievable, I've eating lunch outside the Pompidou. So it's great to kind of have come on that whole journey. I saw 2 shows at the Pompidou. One was de Kooning and one was Bonnard, and they were over the same, 3-month period.
Well, you can see both here if you want, if you're so inclined.
So to make these and then end up back in Paris is a great idea.
And you'll bring them. I mean, they're finished. You'll show them publicly for the first time at the Cartier Foundation and the last time, because they'll then be disseminated. They'll go to different collections, different homes. So there's a kind of mirroring of the cherry blossom in that sense. They'll have one flourish all together, this immersive experience of showing them, and then off they go.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it, but I didn't think about it in terms of cherry blossoms, but you're right, it's the same thing. Same thing's happened with these. Yeah, amazing.